Welcome, everyone. It's Reverend Therese, Unity Spiritual Center, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. And today is May 15th. Thank you for being with us wherever you are, on whatever day it is that you're with us. We are grateful for your presence and the opportunity to share a little bit of unity with you. Let's close our outer eyes as we always do to start in prayer. We invite you to move from your head to your heart space and breathe. Breathe into this very now moment, surrounded by the love and the light of God that is always present. Letting your love emanate out from you wherever you are at this time, whatever time it is you're with us. And let it bless us. And we receive. We open our minds and our hearts and our ears to learn a little bit about truth today. Well, we're going to talk about truth at least today. And so it is. We pray this in the name, after the nature, and under the authority of the living love and presence that is you and that is me. And so it is. Amen. Reverend Therese, Unity Spiritual Center, Hilton Head Island. Write your name in where you're from, please, on the Facebook Live page. And if you have a prayer request, intention, or would like to be on our email list, let us know. We are having a Metaphysics of the Beatitudes class on Wednesday, May 18th. If you would like information for that Zoom link, go ahead and let us send us an email. So I want to talk about truth from a standpoint of unity thinking. Everybody breathe. We get a glimpse of spiritual insight, and it allows us to feel so full. I remember 33 years ago learning about unity and just really feeling like, wow, this makes sense to me. Francis Bacon, who was an English philosopher in 1561, says, "No pleasure is comparable to the standing upon the vantage ground of truth." Now, remember, we don't tell you in unity what to think. We ask you to think and then to question what it is you're thinking and look at it again, take it to prayer, and then discern what is yours to do. When we have a mountaintop experience, when we read about those in the Bible, it's about an elevated consciousness. It's about living from the prospect of the Christ consciousness within us already, the higher level, meaning we've let go of the ego and we're coming from a place of love and light. It's exhilarating, it's inspiring. And what happened for me and might happen for you as well, or already has happened, is once you get a taste of the truth, then, and the viewpoint from, wow, let me live from this place of peace, then we don't really ever want to go back to the stinking thinking. We don't want to go back and allow the negative to have its way with us. It's kind of like we get hooked. Yeah? It's a fabulous way. I was just saying yesterday, I cannot imagine my life without unity teachings. Now, it can also be frustrating. It still happens all these years later because I've got these newfound perspectives, perceptions, the way I'm actually able to see it rightly. And then every once in a while, that ego creeps in, and says, hey, I want you to resume the stinking thinking. And we get to say no. Now, for me, I attended a Unity church back in the day, 1989 in Chicagoland. And I read Unity Magazine and learned about the daily devotional, the daily word, that my grandmother and my mother read for years and years and years, and I did not know that. I did not know that. Maybe that has happened to you as well. And then, like me, maybe you can't get enough to read. Everything you can get your hands on, you're going to read. There's a great website I want to tell you about. It's called truthunity.net. All of the metaphysical Bible and the revealing word, as well as many, 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 and then many more books are available to you online. Word search, read about Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, excuse me. So know that. And then what happens is, for me, I had this whole new sense of being, this whole way of living from a state of consciousness, of confidence and courage. I like to say, courage is fear that has said its prayers. Kind of like a cape you put on in the morning, right? And then you realize, whoa, everything around you is shifting. What I call the holy shift, because that's what I learned from Albert Einstein. We have a shift. Careful how you hear that. And life becomes as it never was before. And our attitudes become contagious. Yes? Yes. So we get to emerge from this awakening that happens all these years later, even for me on a daily basis, to look around the world and then see, oh, I'm looking at it this way, right? Because we see things the way we are, not the way things are. Eric Butterworth tells us that. You and I are affirming everything is of God, everything is happening for us, everything is in divine order, and we breathe through things. We respond versus react. And then we realize, wow, not everybody does this. Not everybody understands the way we think as Unity students. So the new opportunity that we have, the possibility that presents itself, is one of greater living from this truth that we have. To be like Jesus in the way that he was the great example rather than the great exception. Are you willing? Are you willing? We get to a state of mind where we get to figure out, sometimes on an hourly basis, how to be peace in the midst of turmoil. Now, it could be on the road, you could be with family members, you could be in the 10 or less checkout lane. I'm not sure. Could be watching the news, which I invite you to turn off. So we get to feel how to live into this being peace. We get to deal with how to be love in the midst of people that are less than loving. They might be spewing hate things. They might be saying things that don't resonate with you. How do you remain from this place of love? How do you get to be true to your convictions in the midst of life, and you don't really want to rub people wrong all the time, right? Because as truth students, our job is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. My job as a minister as well. And yet, I know you've experienced this, that you say something and people look at you like, whoa, I never heard it that way, right? Because we're always being the teacher or the student, right? The facilitator or the student. How can we do business as a spiritual consciousness in the marketplace of the world that's filled with attitudes of materialism? So much choices to make in a day, in a week, in a month, right? So Eric Butterworth calls this state of being, opportunity, in tune with God and out of step with the world. In tune with God and out of step with the world. I would say that's pretty much a fair statement for me. Excuse me, I just spilled my water. I think that's a fair statement. So how do you stay in step with God and in step with the world? Let's see. We remember first and foremost, always and in always, that life is lived from the inside out. So let us not be so worried about what's happening outside of us. Let us go within, see where we are uncomfortable, see where we are needing more time with God. So let's take a moment and have a break to be hydrated. We always are prayed up. We are hydrated. We drink up. And life is good. Life is good. So the conditions around us, outside of us, so to speak, are representative of the states of our consciousness. So when I look outside and I see the sun and I think, more sun, well, change your mind, Therese. Put on the 50 sunscreen, right? And know that your plants outside are so happy because of the sun. So it's about dealing with our attitude. I always invite us to come from an attitude of gratitude if we can get there. Let me change that. When we get there, as we get there, because we can always get there. And we're not sure how it is because I'm not the boss of you and you're not the boss of me, right? So breathe with me. And let's breathe again. So when we find ourselves resisting or being afflicted, let's say, right? Resisting the negative thoughts of someone else or the actions of another, let's realize that we need to stop for a moment and realize that the reflection of our own inner being is showing up, making manifest by another in our presence. So when I'm in a situation where someone's bothering me, whatever that is, I get to look back at myself and say, what about this situation is part of Therese? This isn't about beating up self. This is about understanding you always, I hope, want to come from the highest and the best consciousness. Well, how do we do that? Because when I'm prayed up and I'm centered in my God space and I'm on purpose, I can be with that same person in that same situation and not have it get on my last nerve. I am the one who gets to decide how I will react or respond. Getting back to the righteousness, which means the right relation to God. I love that. So in my right relation to God, I get to understand that I'm also going to continuously be balancing my humanity and my divinity. Reverend Paul Hasselbeck, I got to see him last week when I was out at Unity Village, and he says 100% human, 100% divine, Therese. That never changes. And just like Jesus, who we use as our way shower in Unity, we get to balance that. We get to see the wrestling, so to speak, that happens depending upon the situations we're in. We get to be the great example. There's a quote that I read, and I'm not sure who actually said it. I would rather see a sermon than hear one any day. So you and I, that's our job. Walking the walk, talking the talk together. Don't just talk the talk and not walk the walk, because it's incongruent. And people can smell that. They can feel it in their heart. Something's amiss, right? And we all have our moments. Balancing the humanity with the divinity. Being the boss of yourself. Byron Katie, love her, has a saying, whose business are you in? Your business, their business, or God's business? I get to be in Therese's business. You be in your business. Let God be in God's business. And this way then, we don't allow the outside of us to be so impactful on us. Eric Butterworth says there's a kind of mental inertia that resists change. So I'm inviting you to acknowledge that change happens and then allow for the accepting of the change that's happening. So we acknowledge it, we allow it, we accept it, and then what happens is we stopped resisting it. Because we know in unity, what we resist persists. That's why it's so important to be mindful of our mind-filled thoughts. Every time we make a decision to improve our lives, improve our thinking, however it is you want to call it, we are compelled to come to grips, sounds like my father's talking, with the states of mind that lead us to this present moment, right? So the reflection of where we have been that brought us to this now moment is part of our growth. Everyone breathe with me. And breathe again. So for example, the story where Jesus is out in the wilderness, he is challenged by the mental inertia that's demonstrated by his struggle with Satan, as it's so written in the Bible, right? Satan represents negative thoughts, the universal negative in the world, everything that is not of love. Of course, Jesus is wrestling with these when he's in the wilderness. You and I do that all the time. I do it here in my beautiful sanctuary of plants. But I'm still in a state of wilderness, even though I'm surrounded by beauty, because I'm not there. Right? I've allowed something to bother me. I've allowed a negative thought, an ego-driven thought to take over. When I studied spiral dynamics, so honored to do that with Don Beck as well as EJ and Harv Morrow. And we looked at the Bible, of course, but what we came to understand is that life pushes us and spirit pulls us, right? So think about it. I have been pushed through life and gratefully for 33 years have been pulled by spirit, even as life was pushing. We get to breathe into this. It's exciting to realize, oh, everything is for my highest and my best. So Jesus caught this idea. Richard Rohr, we talked about last year when we were studying the universal Christ. We get to catch the divinity of another. we can only do that when we have already affirmed the divinity within ourselves. We are divine. Say it with me. I am divine. Say it again. I am divine. And breathe. This allows us then to see with eyes of love, to be righteously in right relation to God as we discern what is ours to do with whomever it is that we're working with or we're in relationship with, right? So it's kind of like almost as if it was, like the human consciousness is saying to Jesus back in the day, hey, dude, don't be foolish, man. You got all the powers in the world. You could rule everything. The ego likes to think it's in charge. Now remember, ego means edging God out. Right? So because of what we've come to understand about Jesus's unshakable foundation of faith, that the vision he led for his ministry overcame the pulling of the ego so that he could then have this blossoming of his divinity from which to make his next steps, his next talk. Remember, very famous words are, get thee behind me. Get thee behind me. So all the negative thoughts, all the things that don't longer serve us, say it with me. Get thee behind me. And breathe. And breathe. So then you and I stand in our truth, whatever that means. And again, sometimes it's lonely. Even our voice might shake, but we stand in our truth. And will we experience mudslinging and arrows? Maybe not physically, and yet it might feel like that. And this is where we then get centered and realize we've already been prayed up for the day, and we allow ourselves to have a mountaintop moment, and we come from that highest consciousness, that Christ consciousness within us. We don't have to fight the things outside of us. We go back to center. Because remember, we're the ones we're in charge of. Doesn't mean we're not called to action. It doesn't mean we don't hold other people accountable, but we really are only in charge of ourselves. We get to continuously release our divinity, to share it with others in all situations. Eric Butterworth says, if you are greatly concerned about the well-being of another, it shows that you need to go back to the truth more than you might realize. What I believe he's talking about is codependency. I can't have you be more important than me. Now, we're not talking about health situations. We're talking about spiritual situations. I cannot make you more important than you believe yourself to be. Now, as a minister, I have different roles I play. We're talking about just the regular development of ourselves. We get to see things rightly. We get to remember, I don't get to see things as I am. I get to see them as they are. So we let go the attachment. We let go the uncomfortableness and realize when we're with somebody or in a situation that is afflicting us, then we get to come from a greater place of understanding, a greater place of love, while we hold true to our truth. Matthew in the chapter 7, verse 5 says, first take the log out of your own eye And then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your neighbor's eye. I remember the day when I was in a conflictive conversation and somebody in the congregation stood up and said that to the person who was not happy with me. Clear as day. What a great reminder. Self first, capital S, self first. And then from this place of prayed up, from this place of knowing the truth, we go forward. We embrace that the mirrors we see in others are a self-critique. We get to embrace that our own consciousness will continue to grow and evolve when we accept change and acknowledge loss. Honest with our feelings. Seeing others rightly, Eric Butterworth says, and developing the consciousness to be a silent blessing to them. And then allowing them to be a silent blessing to us, to me, to you. Creates then the atmosphere of all the while holding our own inner peace. And that, Butterworth says, is what truth is all about. You be you, I'll be me. We both are centered in that knowing of God, and peace is available. Is it easy? Not always. It's pretty simple though, right? So we can't have otheritis. We can't make someone what's wrong with us. We go back to center, take it to prayer. Eric Butterworth says, I think the greatest waste of human energy is the frustrated effort to try to change other people. This is a foundational, basic unity teaching to help loved ones overcome weakness, to heal hurts, to resolve conflicts, or to make people who are antagonizing others cease antagonizing. It's a waste of time, Butterworth says. We can't make another person change. We can only demonstrate through our own growth processes, the way we handle the situations, what it looks like to come from the consciousness of Christ, to come from the place of love that resides within us. Each of us doing our own work. So we don't make our life every day about changing others. It's about changing our negative thoughts. It's about changing any kind of ego-driven lack of limitation. We get to gratitude. I think there's a great story we learned as kids. It's the story of the ugly duckling. So imagine, Mama gives birth. Imagine her great exasperation over this misfit amongst her others. And her struggle, I think it's kind of appropriate the week after Mother's Day, to allow this ugly duckling to fit in, to be accepted as a duck. And the duck did change, at least as the story goes. Not in the way, though, that others thought this ugly duckling should, quote unquote, change. And remember, when we start shoulding, it starts to smell. The ugly duckling started to realize, oh, wait a minute. I'm beautiful as I am. Do I look like others? No. Do I look like you? No. Do you have as beautiful plants as me? I'm not sure. Maybe you have different kind of beautiful plants, right? So instead of trying to get others to be in step with us, how about we just get our steps right and then make that the demonstration and allow others to be who they've come here to be as we be who we've come here to be. We seem to forget, Butterworth says, that truth is not something to testify to, rather, truth is something to live. Let me say it again. Truth is not something to testify to, rather, truth is something to live. Focus on ourselves, centered in self with a capital S, up our consciousness, and then know, oh, I'm going to be who I've come here to be. Your opinion is not more important than my opinion. My relationship with God is my leading opinion factor in my life. There's an ancient story that says, you can't stop the birds flying around. You can make a decision not to let them nest in your hair. So there are things that you get to have control over that are responsible for you. And yet, get in tune with God. And then what happens is everything else in the world subtly starts to change. People will want to be like you. They want to be by you. You know this. Your light attracts them. And then they become their best self, attracting others to become their best self, and so on and so on. We get to influence by the light that we allow ourselves to radiate out. As we remember, life is lived from the inside out. Let your light shine. Be the example too. Breathe with me and close your outer eyes as we take a moment and move from our head to our heart. And we have some time in quiet and meditation together. In tune with God and out of step with the world, we breathe together. And as we use our breath as a tool, it takes us ever deeper within, where each of us meets the God of our own understanding. And we breathe. Truth is something that we live. It's not all about talking. It's about walking. Breathe. We allow ourselves to accept others and then allow ourselves to be a blessing to others as we allow others to be a blessing unto us. Take that into the silence with me. Say to yourself, I am a blessing. I am a blessing. You do bless me. You bless Unity Spiritual Center, Hilton Head Island, each time you join us. We are grateful. We also are gratefully receiving your practice of generosity with us as we bring our attention back to being together. On our website at www.unityofhiltonhead.org, there's a practice generosity button, PayPal or credit card. And snail mail. Love getting your notes. That's how we also receive your checks, if that's how you want to practice your generosity with us. P.O. Box 1392, Bluffton, South Carolina, 29910. Thanks for being with us today. Thanks for embracing yourself. Hug your face. Make it a possibility of counting how many times you're blessing somebody this next week. Send me an email. And know that we are grateful for your presence always and in always. Reverend Therese signing off. Unity Spiritual Center, Hilton Head Island, South Carolina. Many blessings.